What's up, everybody? um, I wanted to kind of go over some things that I've been learning in my most recent games. Um, and so I just I want to call this how to sort of become a student of your own game. I wrote down some things in my scribbled handwriting, and I'm gonna start with that, and then I'm gonna kind of recap my session, my most recent session, so I can give kind of context for how I'm learning these things. But the very first thing I wrote down on this is that you can get as much or as little as you want out of things in general. Like as I think about life, I mean most of you, I would assume all of us went through school of some kind. We've all worked or had relationships with different people, and you get as much or as little as you want out of those things. I think that's a pretty just common consensus. If you want to be good at school, you apply yourself. Some people don't have to apply themselves as much to be good. I will say I never really was in a pursuit of like being really good at school, but I was naturally okay at it. So I could skirt by pretty easily. I think that taught me some bad habits, but that's for a different time. The same thing with like work and relationships. You can be the best at your job by applying yourselves, or you can get a paycheck and go about your business. Or in a relationship, friendship, or like romantic relationship, it kind of depends on how much you're willing to put into it. And I think that solo play is a lot like that. Like if you're just looking to zone out, you can zone out and play for sure. But I think that if you're constantly like looking at the way that you're playing, you can learn a lot. So, um, solo play is full of a lot of variables. New things happen all the time, and it's up to you to decide what you actually like. I wrote down food, new. So when when I became an adult, I guess I had the decision to rely on old things that I had decided like long ago. Like I don't like licorice, for instance, but you have the decision to accept those things as like fact, or understand that maybe at a certain time things were different in your life, or things were different with the way you had opinions about things. So it's always good to reevaluate um, kind of what you are, what what's what you want out of life. I don't know. I got really sidetracked there because I realized I didn't turn off notifications on my phone. So if you guys hear a buzz, my bad. Um, but so it's up to you to decide what you like. So don't just like accept what 6-year-old Jared believes about black licorice. Let 30 now. Hey, I recently had a birthday. I'll tell you guys exactly how old I am. I just turned 31 on the 17th. So let 31-year-old Jared decide how much he likes certain things or doesn't like certain things. So I retried licorice a few years ago, and I hated it. But I was able to think like, okay, cool. I really don't like that. But there are a lot of times we like push things away as like, oh yeah, I'm never gonna like that. But if you actually try it out, you might find that you like it. Like I never tried tuna until I was an adult, and now I'm totally cool with tuna. I'm not out here like snacking on tuna all the time, but like it's it's not bad to me. So it expands my palate, but in the same way it teaches me lessons about how I can interact with everything in life. Like don't write everything off. So you learn from the things that you actually try, not the things that you don't try. So I'm saying that because you'll see as I get later into this, but that's a big part of solo play, especially if you're new, because you don't know what's going on. You've never written in a journal about what your game is like. You've never opened up a book, like you've never opened up Shadow Dark and decided to play it by yourself. You're doing that for the first time. So trying out different things and then deciding what you do and don't like is valuable. So yeah, I wrote down that trying never hurts. It only teaches. In this case, it never hurts. You can try things that will hurt you. Don't do dumb stuff. But in the realm of solo play, trying things out is not going to hurt you. It's just going to teach you a lesson. It's going to teach you what you actually like. I wrote down that you should experiment with journaling, system, optional rules, oracles, etc. I think that that's super valuable because, like, I'm going to probably start trying new journaling tactics here soon because right now I'm just big wall of text boy. But I think as I go, I'm going to try to create systems that are a lot more easy to interpret for me and also easier to interpret for anybody else. Like if I'm trying to teach something, it's easy for me to be like, oh yeah, just write something down. It's another story to be like, oh yeah, I have this I have this masterful system that I use. I would like to create a simple system that maybe is a good bridge to bring people into the hobby because I think it's a barrier. Like some people don't want to be writing this much. I mean, I've enjoyed writing this much, but sometimes I don't. It's not my favorite thing in the world. So journal with or experiment with journaling, with the system, with optional rules, everything like that. I wrote down that curiosity unlocks innovation and creativity. So be curious about what's in your world. Actually ask questions, like weird questions. Be truly like invested in your world. Be truly invested in your game because that's what actually leads to innovation and creativity. And I think I've seen that kind of in my play in the last few sessions. Like the last time I did a recap, this guy over here, I haven't put this back up, so it's just been sitting on my desk, but a red dragon named Dinzarjan came along and was interested in helping the party out if they helped him out, but it was really just like he's like, you don't really have a choice, you're going to ride on my back and then you guys are going to give me this item. And I was like, man, this doesn't actually make sense. But I delved into that, and then in this session, some really creative things came out that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Also, don't forget to hydrate. I went ahead and took the lid off so you wouldn't hear a squeaky. Man, that water is crisp, everybody. Drink some water. Okay, so the last thing I'll say before I hop into the actual recap is that you should play something that you're passionate about to continually jumpstart your ideas and learn from what doesn't flow with everything. I learned this kind of the hard way. Like, I was met with a very interesting just mental space after I finished up my 6th session, and it kind of blocked me from playing for a while. Like I was kind of confused on what I should be doing, but you learn from what doesn't flow. The things that held me up from that sixth session, I know to kind of put on the back burner for my 7th session, for my 8th, my 9th, and so on. Play what's going to keep you playing. So you don't have to make anything even close to what I'm making. You don't have to play anything close to what anybody else is playing. Play what's going to get you excited and continue to bring you back to the game. So with that, we're going to get into the recap. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible without just droning on with all the details. But session 6, the party is atop Dinzarjan, the red dragon. They are going halfway to the dungeon of the slumbering king, and in that journey, they have to stop halfway, and they end up stopping. I rolled. They end up stopping at Din Zarjan's lair. Eliara, who is my elf wizard, was really conflicted about this. She and Yarki, the goblin priest, are both lawful, and then Ulfric is neutral, but they're lawful, and so they don't want to be helping out an evil dragon take this cursed item that he wants. So she's asking pretty much like how right here, who has been battling. Okay, so I'll just read this. Eliara, who has been battling her conscience all day, speaks up and asks the dragon what he plans to do with the cursed items. So I rolled on the prompt table, and it was uncover place. So he's using this. He wants to use this item to uncover a hoard that's like super massive. Like it's said to have been forgotten, and he wants to be able to find it. So she then asks like the question, like, what if it's not real? Like, and then he just pretty much says, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, which adds a future hook possibly. The next morning, Tiramel, who is this guide who's taking them to the place, she says, like, she leads them. They make it there. Before they go to the dungeon of the Slumbering King, which is this right here, she pretty much, I just asked, does she go in with them? Because, like, in a way, I'm like, I don't want to make it too easy on myself, but also that's a lot to track. And so she ended up saying no. But she does say that she won't be far from the entrance. And they enter the dungeon of the Slumbering King. I'm going to give you guys like the quickest rundown I can of sort of what happens, just kind of based off of memory, because it's going to make it a little quicker. So they enter here, they fight some scarabs, or they encounter some scarabs. We do kind of like a roll to see if they're interested in fighting at all. But the encounter roll went in the favor of the players, and it also story-wise made sense because they had already been previously fought. So then scarabs kind of retreat. They make their way into this hallway here, and I rolled an encounter, or I rolled for an encounter, and there was one, and it was some cultists up ahead. I rolled, and they were far away, and they were in this room right here. So the party quickly ducked off down this corridor, which led them to the actual tomb of the I keep seeing SK and thinking Smoothie King, but it's the Slumbering King. And at this tomb, they see that there's a mechanism on it. Sir Tucker Rose recognizes it as Windry's handiwork. He thinks that he can defuse it or like turn it off. He can't. He doesn't, and he gets like rocketed back and takes a ton of damage. Ulfric goes up. Everybody kind of like is really hesitant, and he's able to get it off. Then I rolled for an encounter again, and the cultists are on their way. And so they quickly all, like Eliara examines the tomb, and it pretty much says to speak truth. And so she relays that, and then everybody says a truth. And they all get teleported into this spirit realm. And that's where they meet the Slumbering King. And pretty much what happens is, I want to make sure, so Spirit Realm, the party appears in a wispy reflection of the room they were just in. A man with a braided beard sits atop a coffin, and then he says, "Have you come to taunt me?" And then they said, "We don't know who you are." And then they talk with him. He pretty much is saying, "Have you come to taunt me?" because he's been locked in here and he can't do anything. Just going back for a second, because I just thought that I feel like it's important to answer questions in your head. I was like, how he's buried, the Slumbering King has buried himself with all this treasure. How, what did he expect would happen? People would come looking for it. But the place was warded long ago, and since then it has been defaced. So that's what happened at the entrance. So they're talking with him, and he pretty much says like, "Hey, I will grant you all a mark that shows that you are loyal to our cause, and it will help. It will aid you within this dungeon, and in so doing, I will let my spirit pass on." So that happens. They go out. They resume they go back to where time was right beforehand. So the cultists are still coming. They ready themselves. They fight these cultists. One of them's running away. They gun him down. They go into this room. It's an empty room. Then they go into this next room, and it's a room with a gladiator named Nyx, who is kind of like a mercenary that's been brought along by Windry, but he's been seeing she's been acting really weird for a while. So he's a curious, he's willing to talk. So he was curious once they walked in, and they pretty much explained their whole motive for being here. And he said, "All right, well, I will let you all pass as long as you promise not to just murder her." So they agreed, and then they gained an ally of sorts. And he did agree to help fend off any cultists who would try to come after them. Then they go into this room where the berserkers who were loyal to the Slumbering King rest. And when they went in there with the mark given to them by the Slumbering King, they free their spirits, and so they go off. But also I rolled an encounter, and it was such a simple one. It was just spiders, like regular spiders. And one comes down, bites Yarky. Yarky fails his Constitution saving throw, takes 4 poison damage, and goes down. And so Tiramel, who is a priest, is outside. She has healing. Yarky is the priest inside. He has healing. So they have to quickly use a healing potion on him. That is their only healing potion, and that will come up later. But they go into this next room where there is like gas. They all hold their breath, make it, and kick in this door. After a helpful spirit actually came along and kind of healed them up a little bit. They kick in this door. They all fan out like they've pinned a cultist up against a wall. Then they start going like toe-to-toe with Windry, and I think Sir Tucker Rose got hit pretty hard a few times as she kind of directed a lot of her stuff at him. And then they end up downing her. They end up killing the cultist, and they bind her. And then, all right. Hey, everybody. Jared from Right Now, wishing he could go back in time to tell you a very important thing that happened with the Slumbering King. Something that will really explain kind of what happens from here on. So they first off asked if the Slumbering King knew what Din's Argent was actually looking for. He didn't. But then they ask if he's fine with the dragon. And there was a twist here. And so the Slumbering King actually, instead of saying what they should do with the dragon, like if they should give him the thing or resist him or whatever, he says, "I rolled a twist on the table." And he suggests that the party use a secret exit that's located in the back of the tunnel that will take them out the other way. So they can just kind of like avoid this problem altogether and then make it look like a cave-in happened. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a really good way to kind of avoid this, but also like do it in a way that like that twist provided a really interesting situation and kind of freed me, as I was talking about earlier, from kind of doing things that don't flow. Like I was really concerned about what they were gonna do about that dragon, and then lo and behold, I'm given the answer through the dice. And so that's the thing too. Um, don't sit around and just like dread what's coming, or just think like I'm gonna have to like take things into my own hands. No, well, take something into your own hand, but let that be a die, singular die. Roll it and let it tell the story, because that twist told a big story for me. So then I had them all roll to resist the treasure that was in there, like the cursed treasure. And Ulfric did not resist. He went and he thankfully didn't take anything too crazy. He took a set of armor that gives him like he was wearing leather armor, so this is +1 plate, but that plate is cursed, and it's cursed in not a crazy way. Thankfully, it's cursed that it takes up 5 of his inventory slots. So that's pretty rough. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to either get that curse removed, or get, like, everybody was protesting, but he like refused to put it down once he had it in his hand, so they didn't fight that. Then Eliara cast her ring of fireballs and caused an actual cave-in to happen, and then they make it out. So that's the end of session 6, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm out. I'm in the wide open world. And then this time around, at the end of that session, I kind of like it was taxing on me. So I made a few decisions. This is me learning here. 1, I will never pre-make a dungeon again for solo play, which that's fine. Or if I did pre-make it, I would pre-make maybe room, like the layout, but not fill anything, not do anything like that, because I was just like, I kind of was like worried the whole time that I was gonna railroad or do something to influence the game in a way that was just gonna be harmful, and thankfully I didn't. But it kind of like set me back, and also then it was my birthday, and it was some other stuff that kind of like set me off, and job interview stuff. So that's not important, but I guess it is important in a way. Learn what brings you back to the game. Like, if something isn't going to bring you back, don't do it. Like if you're doing it for the first time, sure. But if you're doing it repeatedly, like, oh man, I hate exploring dungeons. Exploring dungeons is my least favorite thing. Don't explore any dungeons ever again. Don't ever do that in your game, because if it's not going to keep you playing, don't do it. It's as simple as that. Do in this game what you want to do, because it's yours. Man, my throat hurts. It hurts a little less now. All right. So session 7. Now that I've rambled for too long about that, so I just asked a question right off the bat. Is this exit far enough away that Din Sargent won't see the characters emerge? I rolled, and the answer was yes. Then I did something a little different. I wrote down a setup, like what is happening, because it had been a while. So I just started writing things out, at which point I realized, I had kind of realized this before, but like I realized it in game that, oh my gosh, that cave-in screwed Tyramel. Like, we just left that girl behind. She's just chilling with the dragon. Then Nyx is also just trapped inside. And so it's kind of like I followed the logic of the Slumbering King, but I didn't follow like real life logic in a way. I decided, I'm going to try to zoom through this because this is more recent for me. They decide to go back and check to see, like, they send Yarki. He doesn't see Tyramel there. He doesn't see the dragon there. Then the party goes back inside, and they start digging through the cave-in. Then they hear and see Nyx and Tyramel, and Nyx kind of explained the situation to Tyramel, explained that they aren't dead, that they've taken this way out because they told him that that was kind of their plan. Then then they all leave, and then they have a decision to make because they're here in 10:03, and I just was like, they cannot go back the way they came because Din Sargent will find them. Are we going by land or by sea? Pretty much. And then they decided we're going by way of the lake if we can. So then I rolled. They didn't find any way to get across the lake. And so now we're rolling 6 deep in this party. We got 6 people in total. They're just skirting their way along this lake going northwest, which is going to add a ton of time to this. So that's just sort of where we are. We're on the edge of this lake. If you have a name for the lake, feel free to comment it. So that's like this pretty much this first page. Then they decide, like, they're on their way, and they give themselves a time frame. They're like, okay, we're going to search for a day. If we don't find anyone to take us across, we're just going to hug the water and go around. So they don't find anyone at first. And then during the night, I roll an encounter. Lo and behold, for the 3rd time in this in the 7 sessions that I've played, I rolled a 100 on a encounter check, or on a table in general. And I rolled it on a coastal table, and there was a buried treasure that was just uncovered sort of by the waves. And so Yarki is the one who found it. Turns out it was Memnon's entropic armor. And that armor is evil, super evil. He's super lawful, but he shows it to Sir Tucker Rose the next day, and he's like, oh wow, that's one of 3 pieces that was lost that the Order of Order is looking to reclaim, and they have a high price on it. So Yarki just found this like really expensive set of armor. That leads also, because of all of the stuff they've been doing, that leads them to level up to level 3. And in a shocking, sad, terrible turn of events, my boy Yarki here, I just thought of a nose and then started drawing off of that. I'm not an artist, really. But I drew him shedding a single tear because the last 2 times he's leveled up, he's gotten 1 HP. My guy's level 3 with 5 HP. Believe it or not, that comes up. All right. So they feel well rested. Then they head out. Then I rolled to see if they see a ship with disadvantage, and I rolled 2 nat 1s. So it's emphatically they don't see a ship. It's actually super turbulent. So they aren't going to be able to get across by way of water. So then I'm going. They're walking along the water, and then all of a sudden encounter like the waves lash out and grab at their feet and pull them in. So I'm like, okay, this is a water elemental. And the following like 4 or 5 rounds that happen are just tragic. Nyx, Yarki, and Tyramel get pulled into the water. Yarki gets knocked out pretty much immediately because he has 5 HP. He is currently dying in the water. Tyramel is able to get ashore. Nyx is able to get ashore. Ulfric, Sir Tucker Rose, and Eliara are fighting against this elemental. But it is absolutely like destroying them pretty much. And so they keep going. Tyramel gets to him. Like, Eliara ties a rope around Tyramel. She jumps in because she's the other cleric. She gets there, casts her healing touch on him. Nat 1. So it is just gone. I mentioned this earlier. They only had one healing potion, and it is gone. So they have no healing. The only thing they can do is stabilize him. So then Sir Tucker Rose ends up going down. Eliara starts to pull him back. They're able to reel in Tyramel with Yarki in tow. They just like get as far away from the water as they can. And I treated the water elemental as like an angry, like the angry waves pretty much. So it didn't chase after them. They failed a few stabilization checks, and then like right at the end, thankfully Yarki rolled maximum on his on how long it would take for him to go down. They were able to stabilize him, and that's where we are. He is stabilized. I wrote really big, yes, he is stabilized, but that's where we are now. So being a student of your own game is just knowing that, like, in my experience right now, that I just trust the dice, and that I let go of the things that I don't want to do again. Like, I don't want to do this again the way I did it. Honestly, I'm gonna give it another shot in like a more emergent way, but I'm not going to pre-make a dungeon. But I'm gonna keep giving it a shot to see if it's something that I like, and if it's not something that I like, I may not be running too many dungeons in my game, and that's totally fine. So the takeaways from this video, if you've made it this far, are just to learn. Just be a student of your game and take away the positives and the negatives and apply those things accordingly, because you should be playing a game that you want to play, not a game that somebody else plays. Even as much as I love the idea of a big dungeon crawl and like going in there, I feel like that would stifle some of my my creativity in like a typical dungeon sense. Maybe if I made it a little weird, it would be fun. But like just being in here and like the just like checks and rolls and the checks and balances of like how do I make my way through this dungeon, it was not as creative as some of the other aspects, and that's something that I want to get out of solo play. So learn, apply, and just keep fostering that creativity, keep playing the game, and it's going to be great. So this is going a completely different way than I thought it would. Right now my characters have made it to, I think, Hex 802 and their trek around, but now they've got to bring Yarki back up. So they have a dilemma. There's nowhere up this way that they can find people to heal him. Tyramel's going to have to make a sacrifice to her god to even get her spell back. So it's a big question of like, where do we go? Do we turn north and make our way to this small town over here? Do we trust our odds? Do we go to this barbarian encampment? There's all these possibilities, and trusting the dice, letting them tell a story is what's going to take you to the next level. So get out there, be a student of your game, drink water, and just keep doing it. Just keep putting in the work and have fun. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.